Hey guys, welcome back to the Joe Silverback Show. This is part 2 of family versus the individual, and in part 2 we're going to be talking about what it means to transition from somebody who just follows and is respectful of his family to coming into your own. So first and foremost, I tell you, show respect to your father, show respect to your mother, honor them. If for some reason there's severe abuse, get away from it. But if it's just difficult times, normal children to parent stuff, there's a time to split off and branch off and follow your own path. So what I told my own children, and what most parents want from their own children, and what you guys should do if you are, young adults, cut yourself off financially from your parents completely. Probably the worst thing that's happened in this country and in the world is this ongoing dependence on our parents' finances. But cut yourself off financially if you want to be more free and independent. If you don't want to be more free and independent, then understand that you're under your parents' value system and order, and show deep respect for that, and understand that the history of the family is a dependence upon that family for providing food and shelter and comfort and emotional support. And today, in the United States, in the Western world, where there's so much wealth creation, children can't get themselves free and become individuals. They can't go through a normal individuation process like we did when we were younger, because we didn't have the money, so we had to leave our parents to go out and find our own money. So I think it's one of the best things in the world to just pretend that your parents are poor. Cut the credit card, give them back the credit card, don't have anything to do with their money, and watch what happens to you. The first thing that happens to an individual who decides to become more free and independent is that he starts to research in his depths, in his inner being, in his mind, in his brain, and saying, okay, who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? How am I going to get there? And now it's up to me to start doing it. So that's the beginning of the individuation process. And the individuation process is all about 100% my choice, my decision, my responsibility, my consequences. My behavior leads to consequences. My choices leads to consequences. My decision making leads to consequences. I cannot blame mommy. I cannot blame daddy. I cannot blame my uncle, my aunt, my grandparents, my teachers, my boss. If you want to be a free human being, you will say to yourself, I am 100% responsible. Oh, by the way, magically connected synchronicity here. I think it's Tim Bailu. He has a shirt that says that. And hey, reach out to you, big dude, because we're of the same brotherhood here. And what he basically says is that he wants people in his life who are like him, who are going to be taking 100% responsible for what's happened. Now, let me tell you a few different stories about heartaches that people have had. So when you think that your heartache makes you a victim of something, when you think that your suffering makes you allowed to, depend on handouts, when you think that your suffering allows you to have some kind of special status in this world, it does not. It does not. So in the last video, I talked about this guy that I met on the beach today who was born in Afghanistan. And when the Mujahideen were, raping and pillaging and killing everybody, his family escaped got into Pakistan, and then he eventually got over to India, and then from India came to the United States with $10 to their name. Now, I have a colleague, Joe Simonowski, and Joe Simonowski is one of the younger of 4 children. I think there's like a 10-year gap, maybe 15-year gap between him and his older brother. So rewind it a bit. His mother and father were born in Poland. During the war, they joined the German resistance. The father joined the German resistance. The mother and her 2 children got sent to the gulags, and they escaped. So they escaped and they walked across Siberia into Iran, and 7 years later, this woman with her 2 little children and a butter knife found her husband 7 years later in the United States, and then they got pregnant with 2 more children. These are people who suffered tremendously in order to just survive. I lived for 3 years in university. My twin brother, another gal, and myself, with a 45-year-old paraplegic in a wheelchair. And this guy had built his own treehouse, 3-level treehouse. He took me to the treehouse. We climbed up ropes to get there. He became he started a sailing school. He started a wheelchair tennis school. He was a teacher. There's not one day in this guy's life that you could ever see that he wanted anybody's pity. He was born and raised under, Christian, the Bible Belt area. He followed Christian Science principles until he branched off from Christian Science and formed his own yoga meditation center, and that's where when we came and studied with him. And we trained every day with him. We worked out with weights every day. We went bicycling every other day, running every day, every other day, swimming every day, doing yoga and meditation every day, all under a paraplegic. That's powerful. No victim mentality there. I just visited him. He's 85 years old, and he's one of the healthiest human beings I've ever met in terms of mind, body, spirit. And not a second of his life that I've known him has the guy wanted any kind of pity. I told you guys many times about my mother. One of the neighbors, when he was dying, I heard one of the fathers of one of my neighbors was dying of cancer, and a buddy of mine said, "Hey Joe, you might want to reach out to him." And I reached out to him, and he still called me Joey, and he remembered when my mom and dad divorced, and he knew that my mom was stuck holding the bag with five children, and he said to me, "What's so amazing to me is that we wanted to do anything to help your mother. She never asked for our help, but we would have given it to her had she asked for it. She never wanted it. And Joey, do you want to know something else? Your mother, I never heard your mother complain a day in her life about your father." And I grew up having my father being my hero, and he still is my hero, and he is, my first hero, even though I have learned to see his flaws and his mistakes and his humanness. And I think that's one of the beauties of what I was saying in video part 1 of the family is that you don't have to be friends with your parents. But if you get to a point in your life where you can really hear your father's story, because fathers don't often tell their stories to their children until they're much older, they just keep things buried in there. But almost all fathers have a story, and that story is something powerful that has allowed them to do what they've done to benefit you. And I owe my father a deep amount of gratitude and respect. I mean, he put me in a private high school. He pushed me to go to university. He pushed me to be an entrepreneur. He pushed me into Ayn Rand's, libertarianism, entrepreneurial, the self, the individual, following and being true to yourself kind of philosophy. And those are huge aspects of what have shaped me. And the individuation process, one cannot get to that center and core of who I am and what I am without looking about where I came from and who I came from and what I came from. It's a huge part of it. You just can't escape it. My current wife of 7 years, one of the first things she said after meeting my father is, "Oh my God, you two are identical." And I'm just like, I never wanted to be identified with my father. We're identical. Our mannerisms, the way we talk, the way we think. Yeah, you can't get away from it. It's genetics. It's family. It's linguistics. It's mannerisms. It's what you've absorbed, and you have absorbed the most in your core formative years from your mother and your father, whether you want it or not. So the individual, let's go back to the individual. My mother is my greatest hero. Not complaining, not talking bad about other people, focusing on just taking care of what her little nook of the world was, which was her 5 children. She provided for 5 children. She even gave down payments for 3 of her daughters to get the homes that they have today. She gave loans to my brother and I to start our businesses using her property as collateral. And this was a woman who was dumped and left with 5 children. 5 children that she had to take care of herself, and she didn't get alimony. I mean, it was just a short time after they separated that my dad went broke. So this is pick yourself up by your bootstraps individualism. And I told you guys multiple times that one of the greatest things that I've ever done, that my mentors and teachers have directed me toward, is reading about the achievements of great people. Because when you read about the achievements of great people, you realize that they suffered more than you have suffered, and yet they still achieved their greatness. Well, when I look about my mom's life, she suffered hugely, and she accomplished something that is so honorable to me that I want to be more like her. But if we go on to other great individuals, I told you about about reading about Kearns Goodwin book on leadership, and I'm reading about Abraham Lincoln. And so Abraham Lincoln, March 4th, I think, 1861, he steps into the position of the White House at the time when the South has got 7 states ready to secede, and instead of just banding with his own side, he intentionally selected great leaders from all these different fractions, and he pulled them together because he knew, and this is what one of Lincoln's great achievements was his ability to pull people from all sides together for a common cause. So Lincoln steps into the White House, and he steps into civil war. And the Union was bludgeoned. They were pummeled in the beginning, and Lincoln had to rethink everything. And those scholars who have studied Lincoln have spoken about something that they call Lincoln's emotional intelligence. So here he had these sides that were jealous, quarrelsome, highly ambitious statesmen, and very, very gifted and talented individuals who Lincoln had a gift of reading and knowing how to pull on their strengths and bring them together under an umbrella. And they say that Lincoln's emotional intelligence was his greatest talent. And one of the things about great leaders that is sure to go down in history is not that the great leader is the smartest person in the areas that he needs to have understanding about, but he's able to pull in the smartest people in all the different areas that he needs to have understanding and synthesize those into this chemical composition that turns out to be successful. So empathy, humility, consistency, self-awareness, self-discipline, and generosity of spirit are what is used to define Abraham Lincoln. So I've reached my maximum on this, so we're going to have to go to part 3. Join me for part 3 of family versus the individual, and individual moving into individuation, part 3.